Vakratunda Mahakaya Suryakoti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kurume Deva Sarvakareshu Sarvada Saraswati Namastubhyam Varade Kamarupini Vidyarambam Karishyami Siddhir Bhavatu Me Sada Om Bhurvasuvaha Tat Savitur Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yona Prachodayat Om Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Devo Maheshwaraha Guru Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. All right. Did I get you a paper? I don't know. Like one of the supplementals. Thank you. Yeah. All right. Well, welcome back, everybody. Thank you for coming. Appreciate it. All right. So we're going to do chapter 4 today. So I think everyone pretty much was here last time for 3. So I think we had to kind of tighten it up a little bit at the end. But the nice thing about the whole Gita, quite frankly, is that there's a lot of repetition in it. So it really hammers it home. So by the time you get to it, through the end of it, I think you have a pretty good sense of kind of the message. So I think one thing that's kind of important to think about with chapters 3, 4, and especially in 5, there's a bit of a progression where the whole thing is interlinked, of course, but there's definitely an interlinking progression of 3, 4, and 5, where 3 is karma yoga, karma being action, so selfless action as sort of a way to cleanse ourselves, to purify ourselves, to be able to hear the higher sort of conscience in ourselves, God's voice or whatever. The chapter 4 is kind of a bridge between kind of action and then knowledge. So jnana is the knowledge. And then chapter 5 then kind of goes where it goes knowledge to sort of sannyasa, which is renunciation. So there's sort of this progression of thought of how kind of one thing sequentially is going to sort of lead to the next piece of it, okay? And then beyond that, then it starts to get into meditation and devotion, and it kind of goes into some particulars, but there's a little bit of a progression in that sense, I think, with the 3 chapters, and I think that's helpful for me, at least for these 3, to kind of link them together a little bit from that perspective. So the first section, kind of if we break it up, verses 1 through 15 are kind of referred to, or kind of really discussing kind of the avatar of God or of Krishna. Is everyone here familiar with that term? I mean, we all hear that term, but do we know what that means? And are we kind of roughly understanding that? Do you know kind of what that means, that word? Because you hear it, right? Like the movie.
I take it to understand like a God that's incarnate, that becomes incarnate.
Yes. Okay. Right. I mean, that's basically the gist of it. So okay, so good. So so let me just open up the floor. Let's maybe maybe we'll try to stick with the first, like I said, 15 verses. I want to make sure that everybody kind of gets in sort of their, sort of thoughts or things that they want to discuss about it. Obviously I have stuff I can say, but I want you to talk.
Could you briefly go over, I guess, the names listed in verse 1 through Krishna?
Yeah. So those are a lot of, they're not, I don't want to say this in a bad way, for our purposes, maybe let's put the little asterisk.
Okay.
Those names are not super critical for you.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So these are references to ancient sages, the sun god, sort of the initial person who got wisdom, like Manu. We referred to Manu last time as sort of it's sort of, is it one person or was it multiple people that made sort of the ancient sort of laws or set up the laws of kind of ancient Indian society?
Okay.
Okay, so a lot of these are old saints, sages, God, sort of demigods of sorts that he's referring to, that in this context, and I think that's an important point that I think we always have to, we're flipping again between the esoteric and the exoteric, right? Like the internal versus the external meaning of what we're reading here. That obviously there are certain things that are relevant to us, but there's also context within a story,
Right.
because this was part of that Mahabharata story, right? And so we have to also kind of be wary of not getting too literal with some of this stuff, because it may or may not always line up perfectly. But then also there's going to be references in here, because this is ancient, right? That readers of then would have understood this because it was just very much part and parcel of their daily lived experience.
Right.
So they would have just known in a certain sense, like, oh, okay, who's Vishvat, who's Manu, who are these people? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
But for our purposes, the particulars aren't really super make or break for the understanding. There's the meat of it is more so later.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else for starters?
Is he just laying out the fact that he like returns and returns and returns?
Right.
There's this continuity of like his presence.
I also think, based off of like verse 5, you and I have passed through many births, Arjuna.
Mm-hmm.
You have forgotten, but I remember them all. And it's also non-linear from what he is describing from this.
Right.
Of that, how did you teach him if you're here now? It's like, because it's all happened and this is part of it all, essentially.
Right.
And I
And
think-
so that's, oh, go on, sorry.
I think that just needs to be said like outright, because I think we're so used to seeing things in the, it's a continuous cycle. It's also it's a circle. It's more so how I kind of see it.
Right. Well, and I think also, I think maybe the learning point for us, or maybe I don't want to say the relevant point for us, is also, despite everything that's happened so far, now granted we're not super deep into the dialogue yet, but Arjuna still sees Krishna as just Krishna. He's like, wait a minute, like, what do you mean? You taught the gods this stuff, like, what do you mean? So he still, despite that proximity, despite having Krishna by his side, he still hasn't recognized Krishna's true nature. Does that make sense? So, so I think that's really, so it's easy for us then to, how much more so is it hard for us, much later to kind of, not always recognize those higher truths. But number 5, or, verse 5 is again one of those, I always call it the notable quotables, where, yes, we've had many, many births. And so this is, again, so when we look at, and then if we go into 6, it's kind of the same thing, right? My true being is unborn and changeless. I'm the Lord that dwells in every creature. Through the power of my own Maya, I manifest myself in a finite form. So that was sort of just to kind of go, again, I don't want to go too side tangents. And if I'm going too side tangents and you guys don't like it, just tell me to shut up. I'll shut up. But I think I add these things to try to help, because sometimes we know these definitions, but we don't always know these definitions, especially if we have some exposure. Obviously, you're more new to it all, so it's much more confusing. So I try to kind of help with, if we look on the papers, to try to help this piece of it. So there is this sense of, and maybe you guys want to jump in and talk about it, what is the difference between Brahman, Ishvara, and then, like, let's say the Jiva and the Atman? Because these are really super critical core understandings to really be able to because these words get sometimes confused and used somewhat interchangeably, especially in Western translations, where we'll translate things and it may or may not be the right translation. So anyone want to comment, or do you want me just to keep going through them?
I understand Brahman is the unmanifest.
Mm-hmm.
Made manifest has become Ishvara through the Maya of everything.
Right.
And if we were to break that down further, our individual part of that Maya would be the Jiva, our Atman, plus our own individual ignorance of thinking we're a separate being.
Right.
That ignorance. And we're trying to get to the point of remembering our own Atma, to get
Right.
past that ignorance.
Exactly. Did everyone follow that?
Can you repeat that one more time?
Yeah, I like to be very short and sweet, I'm sorry. Starting broad and going very small. Broad, we have the unmanifest Brahman. Made manifest, we now have Ishvara, with Brahman manifesting as Maya. Within that Maya, we have our own individual Jiva, which is our own manifestation, which really is an illusion, but we believe it's who we are. So that's the ignorance. Underneath all of that is our own Atman that we need to work on remembering all the time.
Yeah. So it's the macro versus the microcosm, right? So if we took the subtotal of all of the individual souls, the jiva, right, where your soul is different than your souls and so on, all of those put together, in a sense, becomes Ishvara, right? It's the collective souls, our collective ignorance, our collective everything becomes Ishvara. But then when we strip away, and that, so instead of the avidya, right, the ignorance of the individual, then the subtotal of all of our ignorance is Maya. Yes?
Yeah, like the environment all total,
Yeah.
Maya.
Everything together becomes Maya. So then, because that's, that's always the big debate, like the manifest versus unmanifest, with or without, form, and then there's the arguments ensue, right? The philosophical arguments ensue. So again, none of us are enlightened, so none of us are going to be a place, and you get different gurus who are going to have different opinions about what's that highest kind of manifestation, So the ISKCON guys, Krishna is actually the highest manifestation, even above and beyond Brahman. To the Kashmiri Shaivites, the Trika guys, the highest is Shiva. To the Advaita Vedantins, it's Brahman, right? So, they'll quibble over those highest definitions, which is okay, but like most of us are still way down here. So it's like,
Sorry.
yeah, go on.
And Brahman again is like the highest wisdom one can obtain.
So
Or is it
Brahman is sort of, that's where Brahman is maybe in this context. Let's just to kind of qualify it a little bit, because again, philosophical sort of discussion and quibbles. Brahman in this context is sort of the underlying like sort of consciousness, awareness that is the universe.
Okay.
So Brahman is at once, in a sense, to use a little philosophy, Brahman is both the material cause of the universe
Okay.
and the intelligent cause, or what's the other word they use for it? It's both causes. Brahman it's simultaneously the material and the intelligent cause
Okay.
of the universe. Okay, but Brahman is unmanifested. So Brahman is
The source
not
of it.
affected. It's sort of the transcendental consciousness that underlines everything. So this is when we were talking last time. We were talking about sort of the closest that these guys that have sort of touched it, in a sense, the high seers describe it as Sat, remember, eternal Chit consciousness, and then Ananda bliss. So it's not that those are qualities of it; those were just the words that as close as they could get to it.
Okay.
But what happens is that because people are people, then we all like to argue with each other. Then there's arguments: does Brahman have a form? Does Brahman not have a form?
Okay.
Right, and then this is where then things start to get more messy.
Oh, we talked about that a little bit last time.
Mhm.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So what they've done then is they've said, well, if that thing is uninvolved, then how could it create the universe? Because it's the electricity, so to speak, the power behind it all.
Okay.
If you think about it, like there's electricity that's doing all of these lights. I could plug in a blender, I could plug in a fan, I could plug in a diffuser. All of those are all manifestations differently. A blender is not a diffuser, but the electricity inside of all of them is Brahman.
Okay. That helped me.
Okay, but when we're talking here about a more personalized God, so when you and I think of God and God is listening to us, we're praying to God in whatever form that may be, that's going to be more so what we would think of as an Ishvara. That's the terminology for kind of a more with form kind of God, right? And then again, then people argue, well, which is the highest? And then they go and they find various quotes from the literature or from the scriptures to support their points, because the Upanishads, which are sort of the basis, like the Vedas, they contradict themselves all over the place. And one will say one thing, the other will say another thing. So everybody, just like anything else, right? You can cherry pick stuff to support your point, right? So that's where all the philosophy schools then start arguing amongst themselves. Okay, and then one other quick thing on that, because he does say that, and again, I don't want to spend too much time on the sidetrack. Through the power of my own Maya, I manifest myself in a finite form. So again, if we remember, do you remember, so Maya is again, it's collective ignorance. It's also often translated as illusion, right? Remember we were talking about the rope and the snake?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so that ignorance, that individualized ignorance is avidya, it's called. Collective ignorance is Maya, but through that Maya power, that's how God then, or Brahman, creates the sort of starts the whole thing up.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to give these are not important to really get through, but I just wanted to talk about that because it says it, through the power of my own Maya, because that's one of the questions people ask. Well, if Brahman is unaffected, then why is there a universe? If Brahman is blissful, if Brahman doesn't want to do anything, if Brahman doesn't need anything, then why does something exist instead of nothing exist? Why bother?
Why not?
Well, you guys probably would know, what is the common refrain, like when people ask, like why does the universe exist? Why is there the wheel of samsara? Why is there karma? Why do we do? Why?
I mean,
It's Leela's play.
That
Why not?
Leela. So there's a concept called Leela, Lila, long I, or sometimes it'll be Leela that people will write it.
Because it's
like
fun.
it's basically God's sort of cosmic drama play.
it's to experience itself.
It's in order to experience itself. Because the thought is that it wants to, if you're sugar, right, you can't experience your own sweetness. Right? So in order to experience my sweetness, if I'm sugar, I need to create an other that can taste my sweetness. Right? And so this is why, to go to let's say the Radha Krishna, the Madhavadan, why is it Radha is actually the primary person there? Don't you think that's weird? I mean, you went there, and it's not Hare Krishna or Hari Bol, it's Radhe Radhe. Why? Have you ever wondered?
Radha was such a perfect devotee in how she loved and desired.
Right. So the reason why they worship Radha is because they're bhaktas, they're devotees, and they want to taste the ras. They want the sweetness, they want the flavor of the devotion, the sweetness of devotion to God. So they want to be the ant that eats the sugar cube rather than being the sugar cube. Are you following? Did I lose you?
I'm following. That's a good.
Okay.
Helpful.
So that's why, in a sense, the Leela begins, is that God wants to experience itself. He wants to see the drama. So another example that's used a lot for Brahman is in a movie theater, the screen of the movie theater, in a sense, is Brahman. And all of the drama, so one movie is a love story, one movie is a horror film, one story is a drama, whatever. All of it gets projected on the movie screen, but the movie screen remains untouched. That's Brahman. But all of our individual movie lives are all the movies that are getting projected onto the screen of Brahman. So these Shaktis, Shakti means like power, often it's translated as power. Sometimes you'll hear it referred to as like the feminine energy, like when we're talking about consciousness or the movement or power or kundalini, like with yoga. This is all Shakti, okay? So these are the powers of God, the Icha Shakti, the Jnana Shakti, Kriya, and Maya Shakti. Again, not critical for our purpose, but that's why I wanted to include it so we could understand the kind of the process of an avatar.
Okay.
Okay, so far so good?
So one question, so if God is beyond the gunas and desires and everything, why does he need a lila or cosmic play?
It's not a need.
Then why have it?
So That's
That's
the
the
big
biggest
debate.
question.
That is the question,
I
right?
have that question all the time.
So this is where again you'll hear me referring to like Trika, right? The Kashmiri Shaivites.
Okay.
I feel like the Vedantic answer falls a little flat. Like so, the Advaita Vedantins, the Sarvapriyanandas or whoever, and again, all up to Sarvapriyananda. I'm not him, just this philosophy. They don't have a great answer. Like if Brahman is unaffected, Brahman is blissful, Brahman is full, Brahman is eternal. Like why even have a Leela, right? The thing that I like, and this is where I think the Kashmiri Shivites, I think in a certain sense, give a nice or as good of an explanation as I've been able to find. Okay, maybe let me say it that way. They have this sense of what's called the spanda. Okay, it's kriya, it's spanda, it's this spontaneity of purpose. There is no purpose behind it. So in their context, they say Shiva instead of Brahman. And we're not talking about the necessarily, we're talking like an undifferentiated Shiva at this point, right? That Shiva, like, so the example is that why do children play? Why do they play? That's action, right? Why are they doing it? Is there a purpose to their play? Why do people dance? Right? There's no purpose to it. It's done out of spontaneous joy. It's done out of spontaneous just for the experience and for the love of it.
Celebration.
Yeah. So their answer is that undifferentiated piece, that's part that's sort of separate, that's that consciousness that's untouched, that's not moving, is Shiva. Okay? But when Shiva moves, the movement of that Shiva energy, of that God energy, that is Shakti. So it's the movement, the flow of that consciousness, the spanda, the spontaneity, the vibration of consciousness coming forward. And it's done for the joy of it, because it's for like the same way a child plays. And in some ways that is the nataraj, right? What is that really symbolizing? I mean, yeah, there's the dwarf of ignorance and we overlay all these things, but ultimately, what is the dance? The dance that's the cosmic dance of Shiva is it's just being done for its own sake.
And with laws of duality, we can't have an unmoving existence unless we have moving. Like, so we can't have eternal if there's not the not eternal. Brahman can't exist without the permanent, can't exist without the impermanent.
Yeah, I mean, I think
It has
It's a good dualistic
It
perspective.
has to be.
Yeah, so I mean, these are kind of so no one really knows, right? I mean, in that sense, but I think that is, at least that I've been able to find in my study, about as good of explanation as I've been able to come across.
And what philosophy talks
I do
about it
have a
that way?
question.
So that is, and you'll hear me sort of drop little bits. It's Kashmiri Shaivism, or Trika, Trika. So that is, it's a not as famous philosophy that is also non-dual, but looks at the manifestation of the universe in a slightly different lens, more purposeful, more spontaneous, more energetic versus more detached.
Oh, okay.
So there's little differences, again, philosophically, like kind of on how they approach each other, but there's a lot in common also. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have just one quick
Yeah, of
category
course.
before we move on, because I was really kind of interested in this verse, like, is it verse? I don't know. 5 and 6.
Uh-huh.
And really even 7. This
Yeah.
whole question here, like this as above, so below. Sam was talking about how she envisions, like, there's the Brahma, there's the all-knowing, and then there's like the collective knowing, and then there's the individual knowing. But I'm wondering, as Krishna is telling Arjuna, I come here over and over in every age. I come back, and I'm wondering if is it also like that's the individual. There's Krishna, there's Arjuna, but in every time that there is a mentor or a teacher or a guru and a learner, whenever there is a moment in any lifetime, in any individual or collective sense, every time that giving of energy and receiving, like giving of like knowledge, giving of wisdom, and then receiving of learning, and like that kind of back, like,
The transmission.
yes, from wisdom and knowledge, is that always, like, is Krishna saying, I am always there? Like, it's not just like he's reborn, this is he comes back every like millennia or 100, but in every moment that is happening. every time there is a student and a teacher. Is that what he's saying too? And is it like truly as above, so below? So like you have this, or is it only him? Like also, when he's saying, my true being is unborn and changeless. I'm the Lord who dwells in every creature. Okay, so that's us. That's Krishna and us. I'm born in every age to protect the good, to destroy evil, to reestablish Dharma. Is that true? Like, am I Krishna when I am teaching others and sharing my wisdom and my experience? Are you Krishna right now? I am Arjuna for you. Is this moment happening?
Yeah. Oh, go on. Sorry.
Yeah, is this moment happening right now? And
So
you just, I'm not charioteer, but you're just seem like you're a pediatrician, but really, you're
also
Krishna.
I think it kind of floats back to what we were talking about last time,
Okay.
right? So I think in the most, I want to say literal terms, I think the intention of this is that Krishna or the avatars, there's 10 avatars that are so far of Vishnu, which is that sustainer part of God, like of the Trinity of Hinduism, that this is that consciousness taking a specific birth, knowing already, it's purposefully being born in order to sort of clean the place up, so to speak, versus we may claw through our ignorance as individual souls and maybe ultimately wake up. But the difference between the avatars and us is the understanding that they came here already knowing what they're doing, whereas we're trying to dig out. So there's all these, like in Hinduism, there's all these various, the sustainer, basically, of, so there's Shiva, Brahma, and Vishnu. And so it's like the fish, and the dwarf, and this like lion, and there's all these, Rama was one before Krishna.
Okay, so like when I was in India, there's pictures. So when Krishna was little, he was already. I mean, I know we had to hide somebody or another. Someone was hidden or something or another.
Yeah.
And so, but he was already special.
Yes.
Okay, so
He came out of the gate knowing who he was.
So there are the levels of like people who are like more special than others. There are incarnations of more like. I know that there's a caste kind of thing, but also some of us are more special than others.
I don't think it's that.
Or born with more something.
More consciousness at birth is usually where I see it.
I think
as.
there's less ignorance.
Yeah.
So it's not that Krishna or Rama, and Krishna, by the way, is even within the avatars. When you go into all this stuff, there's even levels of avatars of how many of their powers they have, and kind of are they a full avatar versus kind of like a partial. Like so, Rama is often considered a lesser avatar compared to Krishna, because Krishna had more powers and more abilities compared to Rama. So even within the avatars, there's sort of levels, like within that. But the answer that I would say, the orthodox answer, okay, maybe we'll qualify it as that, would be that they come in knowing it's not that we're not of the same ilk as Krishna, it's not that we're not as divine as Krishna, it's not that we don't have the same ultimate highest reality of Paramatma, the highest Atma within us. It's not that we don't have that, it's just that we don't know it. So we're ignorant of that, whereas a person, a being like Krishna, comes in knowing it already. So this is why, like when Krishna's saying, well, you and I have been born many times, I remember, you don't. So he came in already stripped of that ignorance in that sort of highest consciousness. So that's why he is better able to sort of instruct us compared to us who are doing the best we can from our limited awareness. So that was kind of what we were debating a little bit last time.
And then that's why people argue about who's higher or who they should worship more or be devoted to more, because there's like this idea that some of these characters do have more than others. So some people worship Jesus, right, in Christian faith, thinking that he was born something special. And then some people say, oh no, he's a regular person who understood things in a different way and was able to communicate it. So when I'm thinking about Krishna, or this like, It's very. I mean, no, this is a story. It's a story. Like,
Yeah, well, I
so
think
not
I
a
think to
person,
me
but-
that sort of the take home of like in particular, let's say 7 and 8, right? Again, on the external level of it, I think this is why Hinduism is a tolerant religion, because it's like, look, we don't have to have that it's just our guy as the only guy, whether that was Jesus or Muhammad or this or that or the other. That it's okay that each of these sort of enlightened sort of souls that came into manifestation in different times, in different ages, were talking to people about the highest things, the Sanatana Dharma, the eternal Dharma, right? And if I was in Saudi Arabia in 700 AD, then maybe, again, maybe that was Muhammad, or whatever that was, right? Again, I don't want to quibble over like little particulars, or Jesus 2,000 years ago, or this or that. So this is why Hindus generally don't have a problem with these other faiths worshiping other ways, or even within Hinduism, if he wants to worship Shiva and I want to worship Vishnu and this person wants to worship Saraswati, like, it's okay.
But they actually do worship them, is what I'm noticing. There is a sense like the dev, like being a, and this is a sidebar, so I shouldn't go into it, but
Yeah.
it's a curiosity because there is.
So not all of these demigod, we'll call them
If it's an energy,
demigods.
it's one thing, but if it's
Yeah, but not all of these are the same.
they're special.
Yeah, well, yeah, they worship him because that's the devotional piece, right?
Oh, okay. So I'm guessing, am I worshiping? Would I be devoted? I can be devoted. Like, so this is my question actually. So shall we be devoted to this energy and the spirit of sharing knowledge and information with each other, and also being students and openly receiving knowledge and information?
Are you saying is that the
Or
way
should
you
I
be
say,
devoted?
here's Ganesh?
Yeah, good
No,
question.
it's a combination. I would say
Like-
different aspects of God bring in different aspects to us. So it's not, to me at least personally, and it's a personal opinion more or less.
Yeah.
To me, I don't think there's just one God
Right.
that the highest of the highest. I don't think that hierarchy
Yeah.
matters or makes sense to me at least. All of them bring something to the table. All the gods, including you and me and the rest of us in this group, are bringing something to the table. We're all gods too, right? In a way. So I think that's how I look at it. So it does. That's why we pray to all these gods. We can pray to Jesus as well, because everybody's bringing something to the table.
And I don't think you could have one necessarily without the other, if you understand me. I mean, how do you express your devotion to something?
It has to be dualistic.
You enact it in your life. Yeah.
I'm so curious. In the beginning, we had this awesome like prayer to start, and one part of the last part of it says like, "Let us all come together and appreciate the sharing of knowledge and communicate it all together." And that seems super beautiful. And like when I would go, like it makes me think like when I could go to work as a teacher, like I could be like, I'm gonna take a moment, karma action, right? What we're talking about.
Yeah.
Take some time, think about the selflessness of it. It's in the energy of giving knowledge
That is the devotion.
and not about me. Yes. Is there a level of that, or is it the exact same as there's Ganesh, here's a candle and a coconut?
No, so that's in many ways the whole point of the whole
It's all the same.
this whole all of what we're talking
It's the
about.
same. There are no.
It's the intention.
It's intention.
Okay.
So
So
this
it's
is-
what it's a preference, or it's a level of consciousness on the part of the practitioner. Because
Yeah.
Krishna is saying, I have a higher consciousness than you, Arjuna, for whatever reason.
Well, it's that Krishna is aware of his highest consciousness, whereas we are clouded by our ignorance to varying degrees.
Okay.
Right, but
Does
going
that-
back to her point, right?
Yeah.
I actually do think that's a very good question to ask because, I mean, just putting a candle in a coconut, what have you how does that help you make any progress towards anything?
Why do you think you need progress?
As in, well, if the goal here is, liberation, knowledge of Brahman,
And
right?
spiritual, yeah.
Why are we putting a candle in a
Sometimes
coconut?
the act of putting the candle is all you need. Sometimes I don't even need to put a candle to get to that place. Whatever gets you to that place of intention and devotion, whether that is chanting or singing, like chanting, dancing, putting a candle, teaching others selflessly, Rituals.
We're gonna get. It's a good question.
Yes, because it hits that back later. So
we come back to that.
Yes. Okay.
I mean,
okay.
I don't. We'll
let's
do that
move-
just really quick.
I was leave it
But
there.
just
Thank
to
you
sort
guys
of
for the-
look, it says, you
This
know,
is fascinating chapter 2.
the 30. So just very quickly, right? Or 33, or maybe 32, 33,
32,
and we'll
yeah.
circle back. These offerings are born of work, and each guides mankind along the path to Brahman. Understanding this, you'll attain liberation. The offering of wisdom is better than any material offering, Arjuna, for the goal of all work is spiritual wisdom. So, if I don't remember, because I'm going back and forth through so many chapters, so I don't remember what we said where, but where it says whether it's water, it's a leaf, this is what they're talking about. Like, it's the intent. That's the whole point of karma yoga. It's that it is the intention behind the action is more important than the action itself. Mm-hmm. So if you're at the place where you're called to go to the temple and put coconuts and light candles and do pujas and stuff like that to the god, if that's where you're at on your journey, then you should be doing that
intentionally.
With intention, like that. But ultimately, and this is where they're talking about, and there's quotes I think in like chapter 2 and stuff, and I'm always terrible at like remembering all the specifics, but where this says, karma, we have to sort of in a certain sense outgrow that outward sort of stuff, and it's more of an inward kind of devotion, right? That's really the more important part, right? But ultimately, this is why, and again, maybe this is a good time to let's do verse 10, right? So delivered from selfish attachment, fear and anger, filled with me, surrendering themselves to me, purified in the fire of my being, many reach the state of unity. As they approach me, I receive them. All paths, Arjuna, lead to me. So this is this to me is one of the reasons why this philosophy is so appealing, because we all have our different natures. So some people are much more devotional. Some people want to do the dancing and the pujas and the devoting of the flowers. Some people are more intellectual and want to study scriptures. Some people are very action oriented and want to do the selfless service. Some people want to meditate and do the meditation path. And what basically the Bhagavad Gita is saying, the macro view of that, is that all of those are fine, because it meets you in a certain sense where you're at. All those pathways are ultimately going to bring you to the same destination. They're all going to bring you, basically, the whole idea is that you're unifying your consciousness with the highest consciousness. You're going back to your true self. Whether that's through the path of the heart, through the path of the head, through the path of the hands, they all are going to culminate at that same point. And it's just like, what resonates with you?
Okay, so then that's like in verse 18 when he says, like you just said, it all fits together. So their consciousness is unified, and every act is done with complete awareness. So whenever we're doing an act with complete intention, fully conscious of it not being like for our own personal gain, that is adding to the conscious, like the greater.
That's karma yoga, the process.
And that's cleansing for the.
Yes. So it's where are we in our understanding and our level of ignorance. So if you remember, there was the last week there was the smoke with the fire, the dust on the mirror, and then the baby in the womb. Kind of, we're talking about that as levels of ignorance. Right? So where we're at in our own individual evolutions back to our true nature, right? We are going to just naturally be drawn to a certain way. And so you will just naturally be more inclined to do service, or you're naturally inclined to do devotional worship, or you're naturally inclined to meditate or read scripture. And so what they're saying is that that's okay, because we don't know all of our past stuff that we've done. And so when we have those inclinations, for whatever reason, we can do that, and we can use that pathway to get home. Because that's one of the big confusions when you read the Gita. Like when you're in the Karma Yoga chapter, Krishna's saying, well, do Karma Yoga. And then when and that's the best. And then when you're in the wisdom or the knowledge chapter, he's like, well, only through knowledge do you come to me. And so then you're like, oh, well, wait a minute, I thought it was karma yoga last time. And then you go to the devotion chapter, and it's like, well, only through devotion can you come to me. and you're just sort of like, oh, wait a minute, like, which one is it, man? Because this is getting confusing.
But they're all the same path, actually.
I mean, I feel like right now you're doing it through this like sharing of wisdom, and right now I'm doing it through my like conscious like desire to like attend and gain and spiritual attention or something like that.
Yeah.
And then when I go home, I'm doing it as well, like through like being a mom or something like that, and selflessly doing something
That's
in
your
my
path.
community, and like it's happening. Like
Throughout
it's
the
all
day.
like in every moment, as long as we're aware of like of what
It's the
we
intention.
of yes, this yeah,
Right.
the connected to the
So that's your karma yoga. So, and ideally, karma yoga shouldn't be a separate thing. And the high, so that's where there's sort of a means and an end, and then they kind of go into a big circle. It's it's the snake swallowing itself.
Yeah.
So early on, we may think of karma yoga. Oh, I'm a karma yogi. I don't read scriptures, right? I just do selfless service. I go and I do whatever I've defined as selfless service. That's my karma yoga, right? My nishkama karma, right? The without desire karma yoga, right? And that's okay if that's where we're at in our understanding. There's no problem with that. Or I just do devotion. I don't need to read scriptures because, well, why do I bother? Or I'm a scripture reader, so I don't do any work or I don't do any worship, right? And that's arbitrary and not really the highest truth. Because in a certain sense, the means become the end. So karma yoga ideally should be everything that we do at all times. That's why I like to kind of go into like what Buddhists will often say, that kind of that Zen, like that complete now presence where we're doing everything with intention.
Buddha mind.
That Buddha mind. That's kind of, in a sense, that highest karma yoga, right? Because we're doing what needs to be done, what is called to be done at the present moment. So I think we talked about last time, the lawn needs to be mowed or the dishes need to be done. Do I want to do those things? No, but it's what is necessary, and so I do it with presence.
it's full integration of the entire divine archetypes like within us at all times.
Yeah, because you need all of those things. So that sort of one of the things I wrote down for this chapter, because it's wisdom in action, you see that kind of interplay, is that karma yoga is incomplete without knowledge, without jnana, and jnana yoga is impossible without karma yoga.
They're the same path, really.
You need to act, but you need to know what you're acting to. If all I do is work, but I don't know why I'm doing the work because I don't necessarily have the knowledge, then it's not going to be as effective for me because, yeah, I can climb Mount Everest without a guide or without a map or without anything, but it's going to be a heck of a lot easier to go on some pre-laid routes with Sherpas, right? So could I do it without any of that? Sure. Is it going to be maybe the easiest or the quickest path? Probably no. So the thought is that once everything, you need wisdom to have devotion. You need devotion that gives you wisdom. You need action because action is the presence of you all the time. And so ultimately they seem like they're starting at different points, but they ultimately culminate together. And that's where you'll see some of the swamis will talk about integral yoga. Like it's integrated yoga. And rather than these sort of somewhat arbitrary distinctions that sometimes we can get looped into.
So when I first started on this path at 23, I would go and feed the homeless. And the amount of joy that I felt, I got more out of it than them because it was because you really do seva, service to transform yourself. Until I couldn't do it anymore, I became a mother. And that was my service, right? So every day, like, these are God's children I'm taking care of. I'm washing God's dishes. I'm cleaning God's floors. And that's the presence you have to have in just everyday life.
It's just asking us to just be not in autopilot,
Yeah.
Yes.
not
Yes.
distracted, but
Exactly.
fully there within.
When you
Every
cook,
moment.
All
you
of these
pray.
moments.
When you stir the food, you put on our bhajans or put on music so that love is infused into the food, which goes into my children.
So can I ask about? So there's a lot that's been said about intention specifically, right? So that's kind of the key point here. Of you can do or know or whatever path you take, but it has to be with the intention of reaching enlightenment. Am I understanding that correctly?
I think it's so again, we talked about this a little bit, like, we'll go, just finish your question and maybe we'll...
Yeah. So if we're going to accept that we're doing these karma yoga, or we're studying the scriptures, right, or as you said, right, or doing the seva, right, if that's what we're doing with the intention of we want to develop ourselves so that we can ultimately know the Brahman, right? So if that's the case, I'll point to text 20, where again, I'm stuck with the ISKCON one for now. I will get the I will get the other one.
It's
There's
okay.
a copy here.
Did you
Oh,
like
is there?
one?
Yeah, you can borrow it.
Okay.
Or maybe that
It's
one.
fine. It doesn't. It's okay. It's
I'm
okay.
curious to know.
Okay, well, so on text 20, ISKCON has it translated as abandoning all attachment to the results of his activities.
Mm-hmm.
Ever satisfied and independent, he performs no fruitive action, although engaged in all kinds of undertakings. So, the natural follow-on question here is that, and this is an idea that kind of repeats throughout the Gita, is that you have to sort of separate what you're doing from the results of your actions. So if we are doing things with intention, meaning intention being we're doing it to become enlightened, is that not directly contradicted by the Gita?
I think we shouldn't say
classic
the path.
question.
I think we shouldn't say the path, and we shouldn't. I mean, we could. I'm not saying that, but like, I don't think of it as a path toward anything. And I feel like enlightenment. To seek enlightenment is about me, right? Like that brings it into like not selfless and not intent. Because I'm like wanting to be somewhere where I'm not. But in any moment, like when you're washing the dishes in pure love and connection, it's
You're
an
already
enlightened
there.
feeling. So you're right. It's never far away. It's always
Remembering.
inside. Yeah, it's just remembering.
So you're right. This is the perennial dilemma that is always us, and I think we even alluded to it last time. Always gets asked: is it the desire for liberation still a desire that needs to be given up? Because ultimately, if you don't have a desire for liberation or God consciousness or Krishna consciousness or whatever, however we want to define that right? Then why would you get up and do sadhana? You probably wouldn't. And so the thought is that yes, ultimately, we do need to you do sadhanas to get to the point where you're stripping away your ignorance, to get to the point where you are aware of who you actually are. But eventually even this, that needs to transcend. So this is where you'll see, like, so for example, you'll see quotes from Ramana Maharishi, or Nisargadatta Maharaj, or, some of these Taoist kind of guys or whatever. Or there's this guy, Robert Adams, who was a big American devotee of Ramana Maharishi. And they're like, you don't need to do anything. Like, you are already it. You are it, right? So there's nothing that needs to be done. You don't need to do anything. And so I think, yes, at a very high esoteric level, that's true. Like, their understanding is at such a place that we don't need to do everything. But the issue is that if we do nothing, eventually, yes, we could ultimately just stumble through life just doing what we do and learn the lessons of I do this and I have the consequences of it, I do that, I have the consequences of it, and eventually I will outgrow the desire to do this or I'll do that because I'm tired of those consequences. And so yes, there's going to be a natural evolution that would happen if you did nothing. We're all going to evolve whether you do it or not. I think the thought with all of this is to try to, in a certain sense, accelerate that process, because it's for people who have those, if like on the papers that I think it was last time, we didn't really talk about it, but the 4 qualifications that we talk about, and one of them is mumukshutva, which is the desire for liberation, right? So I think we don't have to, there's no have to. We do these sadhanas of various flavors to try to accelerate the growth. And yet, ultimately, yes, when all is said and done, then we have to even let all that go. And then we're just sitting in who we already were. It's again, the analogy that's frequently used is like if you're looking for your car keys, right? And you're looking or your sunglasses, and you can't find your, or, you're texting your wife because you can't find your cell phone, and you're like, babe, where's my cell phone? Right? And then you finally realize, oh,
I've had it a couple times.
my glasses were here all the while. And so it was only as a result of the ignorance of the fact that my glasses were up here when I was looking for them out there. But there's just that process that we have to go to, because like it or not, want to acknowledge it or not, we are living in ignorance of our true nature. And so then it's a matter of, if you have those desires to sort of be liberated or whatever you want to call that, or Krishna consciousness or whatever, then you can do these satsangs, or I'm sorry, not satsangs, sadhanas, to try to speed that process up. But yeah, once you're there, you don't need to do anything.
So my question here is, going back to your own example of the ant and the sugar cube,
Uh-huh.
right? What is wrong with being the ant? Why do we feel the need to be the sugar cube? So if
Yeah.
as we are like
There's nothing wrong with it.
Oh, also the sugar cube never gets the joy of being like
of being eaten by the ant,
lusciously.
right?
Yeah, right.
So I mean, again, like I would say that we can sort of think of ourselves as the ant. So let's imagine hypothetically we are like an ant, right?
Yeah.
I would imagine that an ant probably doesn't go through much spiritual growth over the
Right.
course of its life,
Sure.
right? So if we were to behave as an ant, right, we just do whatever with no attention to any of this stuff, right? Why is that inherently worse than pursuing the Gita and pursuing spiritual understanding?
It's not worse.
Oh, it's not. It must be an amazingly beautiful existence to be in complete and 100% harmony with all like another million life forms
Yeah, ants
that
are
you
great.
connect with on it. Like, can you imagine like not having to worry about you because you are part of a thing?
I think, I mean, if anyone else wants to
you
jump
get
in, please by all
and
means
then
jump
you
in.
get to
It
taste
doesn't have to
sugar
be
every
me.
now and again. That'd be amazing.
There's nothing wrong with being the ant. In
We're all
fact, the
the-
ant has
we're all
an
the things.
amazing experience in their own right.
Right. So why are we here? That's my question.
Well,
Because
we're
we're
here. Why not enjoy it?
Well, no, because I think if you're here, then there's something inside of you that is looking for something
Seeking.
else, right? So there's something inside of you that is, in a certain sense, recognizing, and I think that's what those qualifications are, is that there's something that recognizes within yourself that the pursuit of the sukha dukkha, right, the happiness, you're trying to get happiness and avoid pain and all of this. In a certain sense, your soul is sort of saying, I'm kind of like, I'm tired of it, right? I kind of will joke sometimes that I think spiritual aspirants are the ultimate thrill seekers, because climbing Everest isn't going to last me very long. Jumping out of an airplane isn't going to last me very long. Name the sensory input, right? Name it, and eventually you will grow tired of it. Right? There's that, like the one story, like there's one of the old stories, the Hindu stories, I can't remember where it's from, where there's an old king and he has his harem of wives and everything, and he's old and he wants to continue like fooling around with ladies, so he makes this trade with his son, and his son basically gives him his vitality, and he's able to live another 1,000 years where he's virile and he can have his harem and he can do all of that. And then he goes through his 1,000 years and he comes back and they go back into each other's bodies or something, I don't remember exactly. And he's like, you know what, son, give it up. Because even after 1,000 years of having a harem of beautiful women, I still haven't exhausted my lust. So the thought is that at a certain point, the soul is starting to long for its highest truth. And so then, if you don't hear that, which a lot of people in the world don't, then they're going to just continue being an ant, and that's okay.
It's
So-
like, why do you come here on Saturday morning? You're a young guy. You could be out with all these young people doing
Right.
all these young things,
Yeah.
but you decide to come here. Why?
So what I think I'm understanding from this is that going back to the ant and the sugar, the ant could be perfectly content to walk around in the dirt, right? But the ant wants sugar,
Yeah.
right? And I think like maybe that is the metaphor that could be used for us, which is that yes, we could continue going through mundane life, but we want something more than that, right? And as the ant wants sugar, we want spiritual enlightenment.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Well, we want,
We
I guess-
yearn for expansion as human beings. Maybe not all of us. I'm not sure. That's what I'm curious always about levels of like.
And I think the verse 41 summarizes very beautifully if you read that those established in self have renounced selfish attachment to their actions and cut through the doubts with spiritual wisdom. So it summarizes the Karma Yoga and the wisdom or the Jnana Yoga together. And to attain that spirituality to that higher self, to go back to that Paramatma or Brahman, I think selfless attachment and the work in action, Karma Yoga and gain that spiritual wisdom will take us there.
And I mean, my thinking, the way I think of it is that this is what the sort of the proverbial third eye is, right? When we draw these things, or when we stylize it as that, or it's the longing for freedom, the longing for peace, the longing for lasting joy, the longing for lasting happiness. And I think at a certain point, the recognition that things of the world, as fun as they may be for a time, ultimately don't last. I don't have lasting freedom. I don't have lasting joy. I don't have You know, all of these things. And the reason that we long for those things is, you know, purnatvam. Okay? So purna means full, fullness, completeness. So like when we do the closing prayers, we say purnamada, purnamidam, purnat, purna, right? The purna is the fullness. Tvam is like you are, right? Like tvam asi, right? You are that. Tvam is you are, purna is you are full. So when we have that completeness, that fullness and contentment within ourselves, we don't desire things. But because we're not purnatvam, then we have this sense of holes in ourselves. We have this sense of incompleteness. And so we don't like that because it's not our true nature. Our true nature is fullness, is purna, right? And so then we try to fill the holes with things of the world, jobs, money, career, you know, food, whatever it is, right? And so then this is how we start then the cycle of our rebirth, the samsara, because as I wrote there, right? I feel incomplete, creates desires, I do stuff to sort of fulfill those desires. Some of them are going to be good, some of them are not going to necessarily be good, and then that creates the vicious circle that makes us take birth again and again and again. So it's, but ultimately that's our highest nature. So if you really think about it, if you believe that to be true, if you believe the Atman is the same as Brahman, right? And again, that's that next Mahavakya, Ayamatma Brahma, right? The Atman is Brahma. When we're not acting in that, we're actually not being true to our true nature. If you really want to think about it that way. We tend to think of this as I'm trying to become something, when in fact, actually it's undoing, it's unbecoming. It's unwinding something that I actually am not, and only just appreciating and understanding what I actually already am. So it's, I like there's this word that's like it says a ni yoga. Like we think of yoga as union, right? Ni yoga means the unbreaking, the ununion of things. And if you think about it in many ways, spirituality or sadhana is really more about undoing more than doing. Because we're not becoming something that we are already not. It's undoing what we are not already. Like to become who we actually are. Or to recognize, maybe not become, who we actually already are.
Undoing who we think we are.
Yeah, who we think we are. Because of our ignorance. Because of what we have assigned to ourselves as who we think we are.
Stepping out of the story.
Yeah. And that's why a lot of times at the highest level doing karma yoga is very helpful, because then when we're still in very heavily steeped in body consciousness, and again that's what this is like, which path for which person, right? Is because as I practice karma yoga, just from a practical perspective, if I'm constantly thinking of myself as the non-doer, like if let's say I was able to maintain that level of consciousness as I went through my day-to-day life, I'm now not thinking of myself as the body, the mind, the intellect. I'm thinking of myself as the spirit, the Atman, however you want to think of yourself in that context. And then suddenly now, it's like practice. Because it's all about just, it's the drishti, right? It's the bhava. It's the witness. You're the witness of that thing. Does that make sense? So if you remember last time we were talking about where it says like, how do you not do it? It's the modes impacting the modes. It's the gunas working on the gunas. But we're none of those things. We're beyond those gunas. And so, but it helps us to practice in a certain sense, keeping that point of view, which is hard. It's easy to get lost in that on a day-to-day life. It's easy to sit around in a philosophy circle and talk about it. It's another harder thing to go about and deal with stuff that, you know, when you're having a crappy day at work or whatever, to keep that mindset, right?
I
It's
also
hard.
really like the word practice to be used for it, because it is. You have to practice something to get better, quote unquote, except for this, it's such a strange application of it, because there is no better, there's just undoing, there is just remembering.
Right.
That's why I really like meditation and other things as a mindfulness practice as well, because it brings you more to that perspective more often in more moments. And so integrating all of that as part of a complete process of always trying to stay in that state no matter what,
Right.
including and most especially in the hard times when I am bawling, crying out of grief, out of pain. I am still witnessing it, of this is suffering. Yeah, that's what it feels like. Here's our moment of feeling it, so let's give it space, because that is the karma right now. And it's hard. I'm in mental health and I do this. I teach this physically, experientially every single day to children. And, well, they're teenagers, but you know. And they tell me, they're like, I never realized, and they knew it intellectually of, yeah, be mindful of what you're doing and pay attention to your body and emotions. Okay, cool. But what does that actually mean? And you can only do that through practice, experientially. Yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
And again, to kind of just to, you know, another, on the very last couple of bullets on the paper, I just included that terminology. So you'll see, like, so for example, in the Yoga Sutras, right, of Patanjali, one of there's the yamas and the niyamas, or the first two steps of the Yoga Sutras, tapas, right? So tapas is discipline, right? So it's those. So you'll see. I mean, the extreme thing that people see would be like the Naga sadhus, you know, doing their tapas, or you'll see like in the Amarchitra comics where they'll stand on one foot for X amount of time until one of the gods is pleased with them and then gives them booms, right? That's the tapas. But the tapas is self-effort or discipline. And then there's in Vedanta they talk, or a little bit of both, but abhyasa, consistent practice. So it's the consistency of that. So those are very much discussed, you know, throughout these things, is that there is a certain sense of, yes, ultimately the highest truth is that we are already that, but we are steeped in ignorance. I mean, if you want to do something to accelerate your removal of ignorance, these are the kinds of things that you can do in whatever way, shape, or form that appeals to you. Whether, again, karma,
All paths
hatha
lead to
yoga, jnana yoga, you know, bhakti yoga, it's okay. Like whatever is going to work for you, that's where you start, kind of thing. Any quick things before we break for our hour break?
I'll ask after.
I
Okay.
thought that idea was kind of a beautiful one, just that even kind of mundane work can be sacred if you approach it with intention.
It
I
is.
like that as a concept.
Yeah, it's hard. It's easy to say and it's hard to do.
Practice experientially.
You know, I literally, before I go to work and I do my morning prayers, I literally say, please work through me. Please help me be patient. Please help me see God in these people. Please, you know, we work together. So, please help me, like, make this my karma yoga. I literally say that when I'm doing my morning prayers. Now, do I fail often? Absolutely.
That's why it's
But I
practice.
try.
Especially at 9:59.
Yeah, you know, I try it. Imperfect most of the time, though.
I take a deep intentional breath as a ritual as I put my hand on the handle to get into my job. Take that breath and then
Yep. Yep. You do
It's
what
simple,
needs to be
but-
done. All right. Let's. It's an hour, so let me switch the battery. Let's get more chai.